Jessica Wishart. Carragher. And Nancy Bates. So I'd like to start with a question for Nancy and Jess. A simple question but a complicated answer. What does reconciliation mean to you?
Are we on? Yeah. It's pretty simple. It's not difficult for me to answer that question because I've been talking about it all week, so I can pretty much just regurgitate what I've been saying throughout the week, which is not to say it has less meaning. But essentially, for me, it's about truth-telling and acceptance of truth. So Reconciliation Australia have done a number of studies, and 1 in 3 Australians struggle to accept the truth about the history of this country, even when the evidence is provided to them. So for me, it's about that 1 in 3. It's about acceptance of the truth. That's what it's about for me.
Yeah, I do feel all the same as Nancy, except I have another side of reconciliation that doesn't sit so well with me. I think that the word reconciliation, a lot of Aboriginal people, and Nancy the same, reconciliation isn't really the word that we should be using because it implies that there was a relationship beforehand and that there was something that we need to reconcile and come together again, but it's actually us conciliation, that's the word that we should be using. It's about peacemaking and actually finding that path and doing something about it as Australia, and as Australia coming together and saying, it's not acceptable what we're dealing with, what Aboriginal Australians are dealing with today, and what they continue to deal with. And I think for me, Reconciliation Week, although it can be really tokenistic, for me personally, I think it's a time for us to reflect that Reconciliation Week has been going on for a really long time, but not much has happened. There hasn't been significant change for our people, and there needs to be more done. It needs to be something that's done all year long.
I just have one thing to add. Human rights are not static. They can be eroded, and they have been eroded in this country since the Howard government, who slashed and burned services and resources for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. And since that time, we've been moving slowly backwards. They're not static. And when you affect the human rights of the First Peoples, it affects the rights of women, and then we're all stuffed.
For sure. So, if further from that, I think, we talk about action is what's required. I think we all agree with that. But what could a picture of a true and meaningful reconciliation look like? Where is something that you would like to see us end up at?
Here we are.
That wasn't the stage question.
It can be as simple as that. We're not talking about, this is the thing, right? Addressing these issues is not a complex matter. The solutions are well known, are they not? Yeah, I just want to leave it at that.
Yeah, I think I echo that. I think a lot of it is, it's about understanding what happened, acknowledging what happened so that we can move forward. And also, it's just about a fair go. And it's about equity, like people in this audience, and they'll know a lot of people that they own businesses or they're managers or they can offer employment, or they can offer something in health, or they can offer something, and it's about giving Aboriginal people a go, and just really being fair, I think. Yeah.
It's also about seeking out Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander narratives in this country. So I don't know how many of you have got some deadly blackfella music in your car, or on your iPod, or on your phone, in your collection at home. Are you going home and reading your children stories from the First People? Are you reading your grandchildren's stories? Are you taking them into cultural centres? Are you reaching out? Because we're not going to come to you. That's not our job. The job is for non-Indigenous Australia to come and meet us. We've had our hand out for over 200 years. Yeah. So it's simple things like that. Like, it's really about, for me, it's all about the narratives and the story. Like, you've got the whole series of the First Australians on SBS. There's plenty of content around. People constantly say to me, oh, but I don't know an Aboriginal person, I don't know where to go. It's like, you've got the internet, haven't you? Like, come on, check out the Reconciliation Australia site. Reconciliation Australia do some great work, and they've got some wonderful resources on their site. There's a Share Our Pride site that you can go to and start just educating yourself. Give yourself the foundational knowledge of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people and cultures, and build from there, and know that you will never be done with it. You will be constantly learning, and it's about putting yourself as the other coming into our communities, and I think that's where the real learning is at. So that's just some practical things you could do.
And just echoing that, I think the schools play a big part in that. Education. I work in education, and we don't do enough. It's still not taught. It's not a compulsory subject. Aboriginal studies is not a compulsory subject. There's no proper training around it. There's no, and the material's being made. There are resources that have been made, but they're not being accessed. And that's really important for us young people to start talking about that, because if we want the generation to change and be better and be fair and know more, then it starts in the schools. And Aboriginal education, they can only do so much. We're having this conversation over and over again, and it's really important. And I've said this to a lot of my friends, that if you have a child going to school, ask them what they've learned. And if they haven't learned anything, go to the school and ask why, because it's stronger coming from you. If you're the parents and your child is going to a certain school, and you know that there's nothing being done or not enough being done, then why? And what can we do, What resources are out there?
Yeah, that's, I think often when we, talk about things like this, or even something else that we're all sharing, music and arts, it so often comes back to education, and I think that's really important to always reinforce with these things. We have to start young. If I can bring Emily and Tara in on this, it might be a moment for you to add something to that of your experience, which is probably more similar to mine as a non-Indigenous Australian of that side of things. Also wanted to ask you at this point what your experience has been of working with these wonderful women and them as First Nations artists, and how that, what it's meant to you.
Start,
I can start. I can add to the education. And my experience of school was that I did Australian studies, but not much was hit on about actual Australian history. Indigenous history was not really part of that. And what I was going to say tonight was education is so important. So many people I've spoken to in the lead up to this gig, work colleagues, people that I see from time to time, I've been flabbergasted by their lack of knowledge about Indigenous people. I was going to say something else very eloquent, but I can't remember it this time. So, Emily, over to you.
Okay, I'll take that. What's it been like working with Jess and Nancy? Do you want to say something?
No, it's fine. You've got it covered.
Right. This feels like a very strange microphone. It's been lovely working with. I met Jess through Nexus. Actually, we did a little mentoring program. We worked on some stagecraft, and I'm just going to tell a story, and I hope you're not wigged out by this. Okay, so for some reason I didn't get the memo when you sent it to me that it was an Aboriginal Pathways program. I don't know how I missed that, and I heard Jess's music, and I rocked up to this meeting not expecting you to be Aboriginal. And I had this really stupid moment. I consider myself quite educated, tolerant, and sympathetic, but I experienced my own bias in my throat when I suddenly was very surprised, and I thought, shit, that's not good. But it suddenly made me realise that the visibility issue is something that we've spoken about together when we've worked together. And again, like you were saying, you don't necessarily have to know an Indigenous person, but this stuff, they're everywhere. Aboriginal people are everywhere. They're all around us. And there was Jess right in front of me, and again, I thought, oh God, but I had to check myself, and I don't know why I did that. And so even that first moment of recognition, I thought, all right, well, I've got some work to do. Then we kind of got to know each other, and I realised that basically we're the same person, just I'm kind of Lebanese Australian and you're Aboriginal Australian. Our families are very similar. We have the same stupid sense of humour. We love writing music. And I don't know, I think the experience of working with you was more about finding common ground, the things that were the same. And then once we had that hook in, learning about the things that were different and understanding why they were different. And my curiosity, I've learned more from the couple of weeks we've hung out songwriting about Indigenous Aboriginal history than I learned in how many years of schooling and university? It was pretty incredible. So that's what it's been like for me. And of course Nancy, I mean, you can't look at her. I don't think we stopped laughing once during rehearsal when Nancy was there. She's probably the world's greatest comedian yet to be launched.
It's been hilarious. It's been inspiring.
Yeah.
These two are writing songs that have such substance to them, and it's really made me go, I gotta actually talk about something that matters here, because you got no time to lose, and you're saying things that mean something. And it really, I find myself getting teary without even understanding why. When Jess sings My Black Boy, the first time I heard it, I was just going, oh my God, this is amazing. And it's up to us to understand that history and that culture and why, It's quite something.
And I think I'm hoping that you all, as well as music appreciators, agree that music is such a wonderful way of bringing things together, and of course of sharing stories, and including really big or really hard stories. And I did want to ask how you thought music could be used in this way, in this purpose, again back to our theme of reconciliation, how you see that happening. Obviously, you can say again like this tonight.
Yeah, I think that, so the conversation about reconciliation is not one, for me, it's not about engaging your intellect, it's about engaging your heart. And music, I know that when Uncle Archie Roach received his aria for Charcoal Lane, he said in his speech that music was a great equaliser. And I think what he meant by that is exactly what's kind of happened between us, is the storytelling, and the way that the heart learns is the way that we come together. And one more quote from Archie Roach, he's such a wise man. We were at a reconciliation breakfast two years ago, and there were 1,500 people in the room. And he said to those people, and I've been saying this all week, sharing these words, he said, what we require of you from non-Indigenous Australia is to love the first people of this country. And when you love the first people of this country, your heart will break with ours, and then we can walk together.
Yeah, that's amazing. Just checking on my time. You've kind of touched on this now, but I'd like to express it in a slightly different way, which is that I personally have heard quite a lot of use recently of the word ally, from describing a non-Indigenous person who shares these truths, believes in these truths with us. And I wanted to ask everyone, but particularly Nancy and Jess, how they saw that word and what an ally would look like to you.
I'll just start something we can go along. An ally for me is someone I feel culturally safe with, and that someone accepts that I identify as an Aboriginal person and has got past their own bias of, but you have white skin and you've got green eyes and a big gap in your front teeth. But so getting over this notion of I think I'll know an Aboriginal person when I see it, like we are so far beyond that. If you think in that way, you're really so far behind right now, you need to come up to speed. And the person who needs to bring you up to speed is you. And so an ally for me is someone who accepts our history, knows our history, that I feel comfortable and safe with. And the other thing too is I think allies are people, just progressive thinking people. We are working towards a greater humanity. I think we're at a crisis point on the planet in a whole range of ways. There's Eleanor in the audience. We spoke at a film the other night, Transitions Film Festival, and it was Futures Past, which is living the futures past. And so there's all this stuff going on with the environment. Like we've got to start addressing our issues, humans. Come on, like we've got to stop, feeling all good and looking for the pleasure in life. Like, let's get real and make this planet a better place for our grandkids, please, So someone for me who is an ally is someone who's awake.
Yeah.
she said around Nancy Bates and Jess Wishart. Again, for me, education. If you're looking to be an ally of Aboriginal people, you need to be educated. And obviously, I'm not looking to preach or anything, but an ally is somebody who is completely aware of the cultural implications of what being Aboriginal means, but also just engaging in the world, as Nancy said, knowing what's happening and wanting to change it, and not being afraid to speak up for that as well. I think a lot of people, they know what's happening and they go, oh yes, no, I agree with that, but I think being visibly engaged is a big thing as well.
Yeah, well, I think we got. I heard that we were going to get asked a question like this, and I went home last night, and I remember something happened to me, an experience. So when I grew up, my mum, when she would tell us something and we didn't believe her, and it was usually true, she would tell us, and I would argue the point. We'll be like, no, that can't be, that can't be, and she would make comments like, well, if a white person told you, you'd believe it, and I was like, yeah. And then I was last year in the GLF, and this is a really, really prestigious leadership program. And we watched a film about how the Indigenous people have always had a way with nature and knew how nature worked, and were in one with the land. And if we lived like the Indigenous people, everything would have been okay. And I was like, oh wow, we've been telling them for a long time, man. White people tell them and they listen. And I thought that for myself, I was like, I need some white people behind me, man. And then I went home and told my mum, asked my mum the same question, and she said, an ally is someone that pulls it up when they see something wrong. If someone's being racist and you can see that, don't shy away from it, don't be silent, say something. An ally is someone that calls it out, And I think an ally is someone that's genuine, like they genuinely want to know. And sometimes they feel like it's going to be silly, but if you're genuine, we can tell that you're genuine, and we want to share that, But it's about coming to us and finding out more and making an effort, because you do have the oldest living culture in the world in Australia, and we're not proud of it. Australia is not proud of this culture, and we should be. Yeah.
I don't have anything too substantial to add, but we saw allies in the marriage equality movement, and we see allies all the time in the feminist movement, and it kind of gives a name to people that can't own the problems but can certainly be part of the solution. So that's sort of my understanding of what being an ally is. I care about it, but I want to be part of the solution, but it's certainly not something for me to own. That's, it's out there for you. So, yeah.
That's a beautiful way of putting it. And I'd like to invite, echoing a few of Jess's words just then as well, I'd like to invite any questions from a couple of questions from the audience, if there are some. And all of the women here tonight want to encourage people to feel free to ask something. If it comes from a genuine place, as Jess said, it doesn't matter if there's something that might seem silly or awkward to you to ask, please, if it comes from that place, please feel free to do so. So is there anyone who would like to ask a question? All right, who have we planted in here that can answer? Did we do that? No, look, that's absolutely fine, of course. Oh, there is one. Okay. Would you like a microphone?
No, I can speak up. You mentioned, sorry, I forgot your name on the end, that the actions of reconciliations are clear. What are those actions? What are the solutions?
Go onto the Reconciliation Australia website. It's your job. Go and do some reading, do some research. You're on your phone a lot, you're a young person. You can educate yourself. I'm going to leave you with that. There is Reconciliation South Australia as well, so if you want to get involved, what I always say is go and find a white fella that's doing the job really well and learn from them. It is not our job as the first Australians to educate you on what you should already know. Sorry.
That's absolutely
Sorta.
fine. Did you want to ask a question? There was someone stretching and I quite
I guess I'll say something. Yeah.
Anybody else?
I've got a question of Carl Wallace.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I just was interested in what you thought, Carl, about the reconciliation conversation.
I've been in the debate too.
Hang on.
Sing into the microphone. Thanks for putting me on the spot, Nancy. I agree. Alan Sumner. He's a musician. He's a Nurrunjeri fella from. He lives in Aldinga Beach. But I remember him saying, that reconciliation. It's reconciliation is it's confusing for a lot of people in Australia, and it gets used a lot. I just agree to the fact that it's not reconciliation, it's conciliation. We need to come together for the first time, okay? And we need to heal the wounds of our people and of in history. These wounds are gaping holes into the abyss. And how are we going to do this? Well, we need to come together for the first time with the First Nations people and everyone else that's come along. On boats and things like that. The refugees. Stop the boats. Well, hang on a second. How did you all get here? Okay? Let's open our eyes and wake up. I was in a band. Unfortunately, we're not together at the moment. We're called the Medics. The Medics. I was like, why do we call our band called the Medics? Well, we're coming to the aid. We're trying to heal these wounds. It's an emergency, okay? There's mental health issues. I've been going through it myself. I've been to hospital, I've been on meds, this and that. How are we going to heal these wounds? With medication from the white man? Well, I need to go back to country and sit down on the ocean shore and dig for fresh water that comes out of the white sand dunes. Kincha is our sacred sand. Kincha. How did I learn that word? Not in school. I had to sit down with my uncle and learn words. And that was off my own back through coming out of high school, spinning out, like up and down, like where am I as a young person? Where am I as a young person in this world? Oh, I've got to get a 9 to 5 and do this and do that and get a house and this and, put fuel in the car. Well, we didn't need fuel back then, did we? We were healing the earth along with all the other First Nations people from around the world that have been, abused for not thousands of years, but a long time, hundreds of years.
And I think perhaps we can also add to that healing, to bring it back to what we've got on stage tonight, is music, and that's obviously how you have done this healing as well. And so I think what I'd like to do now, unless there's anything else from the audience, I think we're going to wrap up this, have a short break, give you all a chance to get yourselves ready with another drink or whatever you need, to reconvene in about 10 minutes to begin this performance. I think Jess wants to say something.
Sorry, we're going to be here all night.
Does someone want to take this mic off me? Because I'll steal it. I'll take this mic and I'll keep on going. And give me a guitar.
Yes, thank you, Carl. Thank you. And thank you for being here tonight and adding to the conversation, because he did bring up something that, a few things that are really important. And around that identity stuff for our young people today, our Aboriginal young people. Aboriginal people in this community that are working with our young people, that's a really big, that's a big issue that we're facing, is that a lot of our children that are in care or have come from members of a stolen generation are still trying to find out who they are and who they belong to. And that's a massive process and it's a massive loss. And when young people don't have strong identity, it leads to all sorts of things like mental health. And when young people do have a strong identity, they are more inclined to make better decisions. They're more inclined to know where they want to go and what they want to do because they know who they belong to and where they're from. And while we're dealing with that and dealing with the healing of our young people because of the stolen generation, nothing's happening over here in conciliation because we're too busy trying to heal while more stuff's happening to us. And that's why we need everybody on board so that we can continue on with the healing of our young people and teaching our young people our culture and our law and what's, you know, and healing their spirits and making sure they know that they belong, you know, to a people that they should be proud of. Non-Aboriginal Australia needs to be doing the education of themselves and seeking education and finding out where they can make an improvement.
Thank you, Jess, and thank you all of our